I'm Kimberly, 28 years old, and today should be the happiest day of my life. As I stand in my wedding dress next to my wonderful fiancé Jason, I can feel both excitement and anxiety battling inside me. The journey to this altar wasn't easy, especially with my family dynamics. Jason's parents, despite their wealth, have been more supportive than my own mother. This morning, they surprised us with a Mercedes as a wedding gift, a generosity that brought me to tears. But just moments ago, as guests mingled at our reception, my mother cornered me with that smile I've grown to fear and said, "Your sister deserves the car his parents gave you, not you." If you're watching this, I'd love to know where you're viewing from. Hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and let me know in the comments if you've ever had to deal with family drama on what should have been your perfect day. Growing up in a middle-class neighborhood in Boston, I learned early that in our household there were different standards for me and my younger sister Melanie. Our modest colonial house with the peeling blue paint might have looked normal from the outside, but inside the walls practically echoed with my mother Patricia's constant comparisons. "Look at how neat Melanie keeps her room," she'd say, even though I'd spent the morning organizing my bookshelf while Melanie had simply stuffed everything into her closet. Or, "Melanie got an A on her math test without even studying. Why do you have to work so hard for your grades, Kimberly?" The fact that I maintained honor roll while participating in volleyball and student council never seemed to register. My father Thomas tried to balance things out when he could. He'd wink at me over dinner when Mom started her comparisons, or he'd take me for ice cream after particularly difficult days. "Your mother just worries about you more because you're the oldest," he'd explain. But even as a child, I knew it was more than that. Melanie, with her outgoing personality and striking resemblance to our mother, had always been the favorite. When I turned 16, I got a part-time job at the local bookstore. Not because we needed the money, we were comfortable enough, but because I wanted to save for college. My parents had started a college fund for each of us, but I overheard Mom telling Dad they should use more for Melanie, since Kimberly will probably get scholarships anyway. She wasn't wrong, but the assumption that I should work harder for what came easily to my sister stung. Melanie breezed through high school with decent grades and a robust social life. I graduated valedictorian and earned a substantial scholarship to Boston University to study nursing. At my graduation party, Mom spent most of her time telling relatives how Melanie had been accepted to 3 colleges and was keeping her options open. In reality, Melanie was undecided because she hadn't put much thought into her future. College was a revelation for me. Away from home, I flourished. My roommate Rachel quickly became the sister I wished I'd had, supportive, kind, and genuinely happy for my successes. We pulled all-nighters, studying for exams, celebrated each other's achievements, and created a friendship that filled the emotional gaps my family had left. Meanwhile, Melanie started at the University of Massachusetts, but dropped out after a semester, claiming it wasn't the right fit. Mom defended her, saying she was finding herself. 6 months later, she enrolled in a community college, only to drop out again after deciding she wanted to pursue photography instead. Each time our parents provided emotional and financial support, never questioning her choices. I worked through college as a campus tour guide and later as a research assistant in the nursing department, maintaining my scholarship and graduating with honors. The day I received my nursing license was one of my proudest moments, though. At my small celebration dinner, Mom spent 20 minutes showing everyone Melanie's latest Instagram photos from her trip to Miami, a trip our parents had funded after her second college dropout. The real turning point came when I was 22, and my parents announced they were divorcing. Dad had accepted a job in Chicago, and Mom had no interest in leaving Boston. The separation was amicable enough, but it changed our family dynamics drastically. Dad, now physically distant, became less of a buffer between Mom and me. And Mom, dealing with her own emotions about the divorce, became even more critical of my choices, while continuing to enable Melanie's lack of direction. I threw myself into my career as a pediatric nurse at Boston Children's Hospital. The work was challenging but rewarding, and for the first time, I felt truly valued for my contributions. My colleagues respected me, my young patients brightened at the sight of me, and my supervisors regularly commended my work ethic. I built a life I was proud of, complete with my own small apartment, a circle of supportive friends, and a growing confidence that had nothing to do with my family's validation. That's where I met Jason Miller 3 years ago. He'd recently been promoted to hospital administrator, and we first crossed paths during a committee meeting about improving pediatric patient experiences. Jason was thoughtful and articulate, suggesting practical solutions, while genuinely listening to input from nurses like me who worked directly with the children. I was immediately impressed by his lack of ego, rare in hospital administration. Our first conversation outside of work happened in the hospital cafeteria. I was hurriedly eating a salad before returning to my shift when Jason asked if he could join me. What was supposed to be a quick lunch turned into a 45-minute conversation about everything from hospital politics to our favorite hiking trails around Boston. By the time I reluctantly returned to my unit, I knew I wanted to see more of him. Despite his position, Jason never pulled rank or showed any sense of entitlement. It wasn't until our third date that I discovered his family owned a successful chain of medical supply companies across New England. The Millers were genuinely wealthy, but Jason had insisted on working his way up through hospital management rather than joining the family business immediately. He wanted to understand healthcare from the ground up before eventually taking a role in his family's company. What struck me most about Jason was how different his family dynamics were from mine. The first time he took me to Sunday dinner at his parents' Beacon Hill brownstone, I was nervous about meeting Robert and Elizabeth Miller. I'd expected cold judging stares from people who might think a nurse wasn't good enough for their son. Instead, I was greeted with warm hugs and genuine interest in my work and life. "Jason tells us you're wonderful with the children," Elizabeth said within minutes of meeting me. "That takes a special kind of person." Robert asked thoughtful questions about pediatric nursing, never once making me feel like my career was less important than his family's business empire. By dessert, they were showing me embarrassing baby photos of Jason and inviting me to their lake house for the following weekend. As our relationship deepened, the contrast between our families became more apparent. The Millers treated me like I mattered from day one, while my own mother still introduced me as my daughter, the nurse, while gushing about Melanie's latest endeavor. At that point, she was trying to launch a lifestyle blog funded by Mom. When Jason proposed after 2 years together, I said yes without hesitation. We wanted a wedding that reflected us meaningful but not ostentatious, despite the Millers offering to pay for whatever we wanted. "It's your day," Elizabeth insisted when we discussed venues. "We're happy to help, but this should be what you and Jason want, not what anyone else expects." I'd hoped wedding planning might bridge some gaps with my mother and sister. Maybe this milestone would finally be something Mom could be unconditionally happy for me about. Maybe Melanie would step up as my sister and support me through the process. I should have known better. 8 months before our wedding date, I invited Mom and Melanie to join me for lunch at a small bistro near my apartment. I'd created beautiful invitation cards with pressed flowers, asking them to be part of my wedding planning journey. I'd spent weeks imagining this moment. Perhaps this shared experience would finally bring us closer. A spring wedding. Mom frowned, examining the details on the invitation. "Fall is much more sophisticated, Kimberly." Melanie always said she'd have a fall wedding. Beside her, Melanie nodded sagely, as though her hypothetical future wedding held more weight than my actual one. "The colors are so much better in autumn," she added. I took a deep breath. "Jason and I love spring. We want cherry blossoms and new beginnings." "Well," Mom sighed, setting down the invitation, "I suppose it's your wedding, even if it's not ideal." That lunch set the tone for everything that followed. When I scheduled an appointment at a bridal boutique, Mom spent the entire session pointing out how certain styles would look amazing on Melanie's figure, but weren't flattering on me. When I fell in love with a classic A-line dress with delicate lace detailing, Mom suggested we keep looking because surely there was something that would minimize my problem areas better. "I don't think you're being very realistic about your budget," Mom commented when I shared our plans for a garden ceremony followed by a reception at a historic hotel. "The Millers might be wealthy, but that doesn't mean they want to waste money on your wedding. Have you considered the community center where your cousin Stacy got married? Mom, Jason, and I are paying for most of it ourselves," I explained for the third time. "The Millers offered to help, but we want to do this our way." "Well, if you're paying, then you definitely can't afford what you're describing," she sniffed. "I'm just trying to save you from embarrassment." The first major argument erupted when I mentioned that my best friend Rachel would be my maid of honor. "Your sister should be your maid of honor," Mom insisted over coffee one afternoon, 2 months into wedding planning. "She's your sister. Rachel has been my closest friend for years, Mom. Melanie will be a bridesmaid, of course." "A bridesmaid," Melanie's voice rose. "I'm your sister, not some random college friend." "Rachel isn't random," I said, feeling my chest tighten. She's been there for me through everything. And what am I, chopped liver? Melanie crossed her arms. This is so typical, Kim. You always have to make me feel less important. That's not what I... Your sister is right, Mom. Cut in. Family should come first. I can't believe you'd hurt Melanie like this after everything she's going through. What Melanie was going through was the natural consequence of quitting her third job in 2 years because her manager didn't appreciate her creativity. She was living in Mom's house, rent-free, while finding her passion. My decision is final, I said, surprising myself with my firmness. Rachel is my maid of honor. Melanie is my bridesmaid. This isn't a negotiation. Mom and Melanie left in a huff, and I received tearful phone calls from both of them for 3 days afterward about how I was tearing the family apart with my selfish decisions. The dress shopping expedition was another nightmare. I'd found a boutique that carried designers I loved within our budget and booked a private appointment on a Saturday. Rachel arrived early with champagne and supportive energy. Mom and Melanie showed up 20 minutes late. Sorry. Melanie announced, not sounding sorry at all. I had to finish my morning yoga routine. Namaste. She'd recently decided she was going to become a yoga instructor, though she hadn't actually taken any certification courses yet. As I tried on dresses, Rachel offered thoughtful feedback and took photos from flattering angles. Mom pointed out how the prices were ridiculous for something you'll wear once, while Melanie kept disappearing into the racks to find dresses she liked. Can I try this one? Melanie asked the consultant, holding up a beaded ball gown. Just to see how it looked. This is Kimberly's appointment, the consultant replied gently. We focus on the bride during these sessions. But we're practically the same size, Melanie protested, though we definitely weren't. And I just want to see. Actually, we're quite busy today, the consultant maintained her professional smile. But I'd be happy to help you schedule your own appointment when you're engaged. Melanie sulked for the remainder of the session. Later, Mom called to tell me I should have been more generous and let Melanie try on dresses too. She's sensitive, Kimberly. Would it have killed you to let her have a little attention? Jason noticed the tension, of course. After a particularly draining dinner where Mom spent the entire time questioning our choice of venue, menu, and music, he asked me why I kept subjecting myself to their criticism. They're my family, I said weakly. I want them involved. Sweetheart, Jason took my hand across our kitchen table. Involvement shouldn't leave you in tears every other day. This is our wedding. It should bring joy, not stress. That night, I broke down in Rachel's apartment, curled up on her sofa with a glass of wine I hadn't touched. I don't know why I keep hoping things will be different, I sobbed. Why can't she just be happy for me like Jason's parents are? Rachel stroked my hair. Because this isn't about you, Kim. It never has been. Your mom has some weird competition going on in her head, and unfortunately, you're caught in it. But I'm her daughter too, I whispered. I know, Rachel said sadly. And that's on her, not you. As wedding planning continued, Jason's parents stepped in with increasing frequency. Elizabeth called with vendor recommendations and offered to accompany me to floral consultations when Mom canceled last minute. Robert handled negotiations with the venue and rental companies, his business experience saving us thousands in the process. We're so happy Jason found you, Elizabeth told me, during a cake tasting that Mom and Melanie had skipped. You bring out the best in him. I found myself blinking back tears at the simple kindness of being valued. The growing bond between me and the Millers didn't go unnoticed. During a rare family dinner 2 months before the wedding, Mom made several pointed comments about new money and how some people need to show off their wealth. Jason maintained his polite demeanor, but I could see the muscles in his jaw tightening. Then came the car. 2 months before our wedding, Robert and Elizabeth invited us to Sunday brunch at their home. After a lovely meal, Robert handed Jason an envelope. We wanted to give you two something special, he said, his eyes twinkling. Something practical, but also a little indulgent. Inside was a card with a photo of a brand new Mercedes GLC in pearl white and a set of keys. No way, Jason breathed, looking from the card to his parents. This is too much. Nonsense. Elizabeth waved her hand. We were going to upgrade our vehicles anyway, and we thought you two could use something reliable with the New England winters. Plus, she winked at me. I heard you mentioning you might start a family soon, and this has excellent safety ratings. I was speechless with gratitude, but managed to hug them, both tears streaming down my face. Later, when Jason and I drove the car to my mother's house to share our news, her reaction was immediate and predictable. A Mercedes. She raised her eyebrows. I'm surprised they'd give something so expensive to you. What happens if you two break up? Will you have to give it back? Mom, I sighed. We're getting married in 2 months. We're not breaking up. Well, you never know, she sniffed. It seems like a very showy gift, that's all. I tried to brush it off as just another criticism in a long line of them. But looking back, I should have recognized the calculating look in her eyes as she watched Melanie running her hand over the car's leather interior. It was a look I'd seen before whenever something good happened in my life, that she thought Melanie deserved more. The evening before our wedding dawned clear and perfect with that special New England springtime quality, where the air feels scrubbed clean. Jason's parents had arranged our rehearsal dinner at Maison Laurent, an upscale French restaurant with a private room overlooking Boston Harbor. The space was intimate yet elegant, with fresh flowers and soft candlelight, creating the perfect ambiance for our closest family and wedding party. I arrived early with Jason wearing a simple white cocktail dress that made me feel beautiful and bridal without upstaging tomorrow's actual wedding dress. The Millers greeted us with warm hugs and excitement. Rachel and the other bridesmaids arrived next, followed by Jason's groomsmen and my father, who had flown in from Chicago 2 days earlier. "You look radiant, Kimberly," Dad said, kissing my cheek. "I'm so proud of you, kiddo." By 7:15 p.m., everyone had arrived except Mom and Melanie. The restaurant manager approached discreetly, asking if we wanted to begin serving appetizers. I checked my phone for the 4th time in 15 minutes. "Let's give them 5 more minutes," I said, ignoring the knot in my stomach. At 7:30, as the chef was beginning to look concerned about timing for the main courses, Mom and Melanie finally swept into the room. Mom wore a conservative navy dress, appropriate for the mother of the bride. Melanie, however, had chosen a skin-tight red sequined gown with a plunging neckline more suited to a nightclub than a rehearsal dinner. "So sorry we're late," Mom announced, not sounding sorry at all. Melanie had a small fashion emergency. "But doesn't she look stunning?" All eyes turned to my sister, who struck a pose as though waiting for compliments. Jason's brother Michael, serving as best man, caught my eye with a raised eyebrow. I gave a small shrug in response. "We're just glad you made it," Robert said graciously. "Please, everyone, find your seats so we can begin our celebration." That's when Mom noticed the seating arrangement. I'd worked with the restaurant to create a U-shaped configuration with Jason and me at the center of the head table, flanked by our parents' best man and maid of honor. The remaining wedding party and close family members filled out the sides of the U. "Why am I seated all the way over there?" Mom pointed to her place card beside my father. "I should be right next to Kimberly. I'm her mother." "Mom, we have both sets of parents seated together," I explained quietly, trying to avoid a scene. "It's traditional. There's nothing traditional about your father and me sitting together when we've been divorced for 6 years," she said loudly enough for nearby guests to hear. "And why is Melanie at the side table? She's your sister." Mrs. Bennett Jason intervened smoothly. "We've arranged the seating to balance both families. The side tables aren't lesser positions. They're still part of the main configuration." "Well, I don't like it," Mom declared. She picked up her place card and moved it to the seat occupied by Elizabeth Miller's card, then gestured for Melanie to take Robert's seat. "This makes much more sense." A painful silence fell over the room. Elizabeth, ever gracious, touched Robert's arm and gave a small nod. "Not a problem," Robert said, though I could see the tightness around his eyes. "We're happy to adjust." The Millers moved to the side tables without further comment, but the damage was done. The evening had barely begun, and already Mom had created unnecessary tension. I felt a flush of shame creep up my neck, but Jason squeezed my hand under the table. "It's okay," he whispered. "Nothing can ruin this weekend." The dinner itself was exquisite, with course after course of French cuisine paired with excellent wines. Conversation flowed around the tables, though Mom maintained a coolly polite demeanor toward the Millers. As coffee and dessert were served, Robert rose from his seat for the traditional father of the groom toast. When Jason was a boy, Robert began, his voice warm with affection. He told us he wanted to find someone who made him better, someone kind, intelligent, and genuine. Elizabeth and I worried that might be a tall order in today's world. Gentle laughter rippled through the room. But then he brought Kimberly home, and we understood exactly what he meant. Robert raised his glass toward me. "Kimberly, from the moment we met you, we knew you were special. Your compassion as a nurse, your quiet strength, your loving heart, all these qualities make you not just the perfect partner for our son, but a wonderful addition to our family. We couldn't be happier to welcome you as our daughter tomorrow." Tears pricked my eyes as everyone raised their glasses. Jason's arm tightened around my shoulders, and for a moment, pure happiness washed over me. Then Mom stood up, smoothing her napkin with precise movements. "I suppose it's my turn," she said, her tone making it clear she felt upstaged by Robert's heartfelt words. As Kimberly's mother, I've watched her grow from a studious, serious child into the woman she is today. She's always been independent and determined, sometimes too determined for her own good. I felt my smile freeze as Mom continued. "Tomorrow, she marries into the Miller family, and while she paused, meaningfully impressed by their generosity. I want to remind everyone that Kimberly comes from solid Boston stock. The Bennetts may not have the same resources, but we have character and resilience." She raised her glass in emotion that somehow managed to seem both reluctant and superior. "To Jason and Kimberly, may your marriage be blessed with the kind of sensible planning and practical outlook that will help you navigate life's challenges." The toast fell flat with awkward murmurs of cheers around the tables. Dad quickly stood to smooth over the moment with a genuinely warm toast about love and partnership, but the damage was done. As guests mingled after dinner, I overheard Mom speaking to my aunt in a carrying whisper near the dessert table. Of course, Melanie would have married a doctor if she'd had the same opportunities. She's always been the beauty of the family, but Kimberly had the advantage of meeting eligible men at that hospital every day. My cheeks burned. Jason, ever attuned to my emotions, appeared at my side and guided me toward the terrace for a moment of privacy. "I'm so sorry," I whispered, mortified. "She's being impossible." "Hey," Jason cupped my face gently. "Don't apologize for her. You are extraordinary, Kimberly Bennett, and tomorrow you become Kimberly Miller. That's all that matters." Later that night, as we parted ways for our last evening as singles, Jason staying with his brother, me returning to our apartment with Rachel, we lingered in the hotel lobby. "One more thing," Jason said, pulling me close. "I've asked Michael to run interference tomorrow. He, Rachel, and my cousins are on full Patricia and Melanie patrol. They won't get within 10 feet of you without a buffer." I laughed despite myself. "Your family must think mine is completely dysfunctional." "My family thinks you're amazing for turning out so wonderful despite the challenges," he corrected me. And they're right. Back at our apartment, unable to sleep despite the late hour, I found myself confiding in Rachel about my complicated feelings. "I keep setting these boundaries, then letting them stomp all over them because I don't want conflict on my wedding day," I admitted. "But I'm starting to think there's going to be conflict no matter what I do." "Then let it be their problem, not yours," Rachel advised, laying out my wedding day emergency kit on the coffee table. "Tomorrow is about you and Jason. Anyone who can't respect that doesn't deserve your attention." I fell asleep eventually, my mind cycling between excitement for the day ahead and anxiety about what new drama my mother and sister might create. My last conscious thought was a determination to maintain my joy no matter what challenges the wedding day might bring. I woke to sunshine streaming through my bedroom curtains and the delicate scent of fresh coffee. Rachel had risen early to prepare a light breakfast and was already dressed in yoga pants and a button-up shirt emblazoned with Maid of Honor in elegant script, a gift from Jason's cousins. "The morning bride-to-be," she sang out, placing a tray with avocado toast berries and a steaming mug on my nightstand. "How are we feeling today? Nervous? Happy? Terrified? Excited?" I laughed, sitting up against my pillows. "Is that normal?" "Completely normal," Rachel assured me. "Eat something. We need to be at the hotel by 9 for hair and makeup." We'd booked a suite at the historic Fairmont Copley Plaza for wedding preparations, with the ceremony scheduled for 2 o'clock in the public garden, followed by a reception back at the hotel's grand ballroom. As Rachel drove us through Saturday morning traffic, I checked my phone to find messages from everyone except Mom and Melanie. "Weird," I murmured, scrolling through well wishes from bridesmaids and relatives. "What's weird?" Rachel asked, skillfully navigating around a double-parked delivery truck. "Mom and Melanie haven't texted. They're supposed to meet us at the hotel for hair and makeup." Rachel's knuckles whitened slightly on the steering wheel. "They'll show. And if they don't, we proceed without them." The hotel suite was a flurry of activity when we arrived. The hairstylist and makeup artist had already set up their stations, and 3 of my bridesmaids' co-workers from the hospital were arranging mimosa supplies and breakfast pastries. Jason had sent a massive arrangement of white roses and peonies, with a card that made me blush. By 10 o'clock, everyone had arrived except Mom and Melanie. I tried calling both, but the calls went straight to voicemail. The hairstylist working on a tight schedule suggested we start with me and my bridesmaids. We'll fit your mom and sister in when they arrive, she promised. At 10:45, as the makeup artist was applying my foundation, the suite door burst open. Mom and Melanie swept in like a small hurricane, both looking distinctly unhurried. Traffic was a nightmare, Mom announced, though the hotel was barely 15 minutes from her house. And Melanie had a reaction to her new face mask. Her skin was absolutely blotchy. Melanie nodded solemnly. It was horrific. I couldn't possibly come looking like that on your wedding day, Kim. The makeup artist exchanged a quick glance with me in the mirror before smoothly suggesting that Mom take the next hair appointment while Melanie consulted with the makeup artist's assistant. Actually, Mom said examining the hairstylist's work on one of my bridesmaids. I'm not sure I like what she's doing. Melanie and I might go to that salon in Beacon Hill instead. We still have time. Mom, we don't have time, I said firmly. The photographer will be here at noon for getting ready shots, and we need to be dressed by 1. Well, you should have scheduled more time, she sniffed. This all feels very rushed. Rachel intervened, somehow convincing Mom to sit for hair while I finished makeup. But the peaceful, joyful morning I'd envisioned had already developed a layer of tension. As the hairstylist worked on my updo securing tendrils with delicate pearl pins, Mom circled the chair, making increasingly critical comments. Isn't that a bit severe? She asked, frowning at my reflection. And should it really be up with your neck exposed? You've always had such a long neck. I think it looks beautiful, my bridesmaid, Katie countered. Very Grace Kelly. Mom pursed her lips. I suppose if you're going for that outdated look, Melanie would wear her hair down flowing naturally. The hairstylist caught my eye in the mirror, with a raised eyebrow silently asking if I wanted changes. I shook my head minutely. I'd chosen this elegant updo specifically to showcase the neckline of my dress and the pearl earrings Jason had given me as an engagement gift. Melanie emerged from the bathroom where the makeup assistant had been working on her, and I nearly dropped my champagne flute. She'd somehow convinced the assistant to create a dramatic smoky eye with fake lashes so long they practically brushed her eyebrows, paired with bright red lipstick, far more intense than the natural makeup we'd planned for the bridal party. Melanie, we agreed on neutral makeup, I said, trying to keep my voice level. The bridesmaids' dresses are dusty blue. That lipstick clashes completely. It's my signature look, Melanie pouted. You can't expect me to look washed out in all the photos. Before I could respond, there was a knock at the door. Rachel opened it to reveal Elizabeth Miller looking elegant in a silver-gray mother-of-the-groom dress, holding a small blue velvet box. I hope I'm not interrupting, she said, taking in the scene with a warm smile that didn't falter even when Mom visibly stiffened. I just wanted to bring something for Kimberly before things get too hectic. She crossed to where I sat at the makeup station and opened the box to reveal a delicate sapphire and diamond bracelet that caught the light in brilliant flashes. This was my grandmother's, Elizabeth explained. I wore it at my wedding, and Jason's sister wore it at hers. We thought you might like to have it for your something blue. It's stunning, I breathed, genuinely moved by the gesture. Are you sure? Absolutely sure. Elizabeth fastened it around my wrist. It looks perfect on you. That's very generous, Mom said tightly. The Millers are certainly being lavish with their gifts. Elizabeth didn't take the bait. Family traditions are important to us, she said simply. And Kimberly is family now. The tension in Mom's jaw was visible, but the arrival of the photographer mercifully redirected everyone's attention. As bridesmaids began changing into their dresses, the photographer captured candid moments around the suite. Rachel zipping up Katie's dress, the makeup artist making final touches, me sipping champagne with a mixture of nerves and excitement. Mom pulled me aside as I was about to step into my wedding dress. Kimberly, have you really thought this through? She asked in a low voice. The Millers are lovely, I'm sure, but they're so obvious about their wealth. All these expensive gifts, the car. Now, this bracelet. Are you sure Jason isn't just meeting expectations by marrying someone suitable? The question felt like a slap. Jason loves me, Mom, and I love him. This has nothing to do with money. Of course, dear. She patted my arm in a way that made it clear she didn't believe me. I just worry about you fitting into their world. Before I could respond, Rachel called me over for the moment I'd been waiting for, stepping into my wedding dress. The photographer positioned himself to capture my bridesmaids' reactions as Rachel and Katie carefully lifted the A-line gown with its delicate lace bodice and helped me into it. As they secured the buttons running down the back, I caught sight of myself in the full-length mirror and felt a surge of emotion. The dress was perfect, elegant, timeless, and undeniably me. "Oh, Kimberly," Katie breathed. "You're stunning." Even Mom seemed momentarily struck, silent, her eyes widening as she took in the complete bridal look. The dress, the updo with its pearl pins, Elizabeth's sapphire bracelet, the subtle makeup that enhanced my features without masking them. "You actually look quite beautiful," she admitted, and for a moment I glimpsed something like genuine maternal pride in her expression. The moment shattered when Melanie emerged from the bathroom, where she'd gone to change into her bridesmaid dress. The dusty blue chiffon gown we'd selected for the bridesmaids featured a modest V neckline and flowing A-line skirt designed to flatter various body types. But Melanie had clearly taken scissors to hers, deepening the neckline to a plunging V and adding a thigh-high slit that wasn't part of the original design. "Melanie," I gasped, "what did you do to your dress?" "Just some minor adjustments," she shrugged, twirling to show off her handiwork. "The original was so matronly." "Don't worry, I know a great seamstress who can fix yours too if you want." Rachel stepped forward, her expression dangerous. "That's not happening. Melanie, we ordered these dresses 9 months ago. You approved the design." "Well, I changed my mind," Melanie shot back. "It's not like I'm the bride. No one will even notice." "Everyone will notice that your dress is completely different from the other bridesmaids," Katie pointed out. Mom intervened, predictably taking Melanie's side. "I think it looks lovely. Melanie has always had a flair for fashion. And it's just a small alteration." Small was hardly the word for modifications that had transformed a classic bridesmaid dress into something better suited for a nightclub. The photographer, sensing tension, discreetly stepped back, but not before I caught his startled expression. Rachel pulled me into the bedroom of the suite, closing the door behind us. "Okay, we have options," she said in her crisis management voice. "We can ask the hotel concierge if there's any chance of a rush alteration to fix her dress. We can ask her to wear a shawl. Or," her expression hardened, "we can tell her she can't be in the wedding party if she won't wear the proper dress." I sank onto the edge of the bed, careful not to wrinkle my gown. On my wedding day, I said more to myself than to Rachel. She couldn't let me have just this one day. Rachel knelt beside me, taking my hands. "What do you want to do?" I took a deep breath, straightening my shoulders. "Get her a shawl. If she refuses to wear it, that's on her. The photographer can position her strategically in group shots." I met Rachel's concerned gaze. "I'm not letting her drama derail this day." "Not anymore." Rachel squeezed my hands. "That's my girl." When we returned to the main room, the wedding coordinator had arrived and was reviewing the timeline with the bridesmaids. She took one look at Melanie's altered dress and, without missing a beat, produced a lace wrap from her emergency kit that somewhat mitigated the drastic neckline, though nothing could be done about the slit. As the coordinator announced it was time to head downstairs for the first look photos with Jason, I found myself retreating to the bathroom for a moment alone. Standing before the mirror in my wedding dress, Elizabeth's bracelet catching the light at my wrist, I took several deep breaths. "This is your day," I told my reflection firmly. "Your love story. No one can take that away from you." A knock at the door startled me. "Kimberly." It was the coordinator. "It's time. Jason is waiting in the garden." With one final steadying breath, I opened the door and stepped forward into my wedding day, determined to focus on the joy ahead rather than the drama behind. The hotel's private elevator took us directly to a secluded section of the garden, where Jason waited with his back turned as tradition dictated for our first look. The bridesmaids, photographer, and wedding coordinator stepped discreetly aside, giving us space for this intimate moment. Even Melanie, perhaps sensing the solemnity of the occasion, remained quiet. "Ready?" the photographer asked softly. At my nod, he signaled to Jason, who turned slowly. The expression that transformed his face when he saw me is something I'll treasure forever, a mixture of awe, tenderness, and pure joy that brought tears to my eyes. "Kimberly," he breathed, closing the distance between us. "You're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." We stood together, his forehead resting gently against mine as the photographer captured the moment from various angles. For these precious minutes, the world narrowed to just us. No family drama, no tension, just two people on the threshold of a shared life. "You're not so bad yourself." I finally managed smoothing the lapel of his tailored navy suit. "Ready to do this?" "I've been ready since the day I met you," he replied, and I knew with absolute certainty that I was making the right choice. The first look photo session extended into portraits with the wedding party, during which Rachel skillfully maneuvered Melanie into positions that minimized the visibility of her altered dress. Mom hovered nearby, occasionally suggesting poses that would feature Melanie's good side or show off her cheekbones. The photographer, a consummate professional, acknowledged her suggestions with a polite nod before proceeding with his planned shots. By 1:30, guests had begun arriving at the garden ceremony site. From our waiting position inside a small pavilion, I could see them being escorted to white wooden chairs arranged in neat rows on either side of a petal-strewn aisle. An elegant arch of white roses, peonies, and greenery marked the spot where Jason and I would exchange vows. Through the pavilion window, I spotted my father greeting Jason's parents, his manner warm and genuine. Nearby, Mom sat stiffly in her place of honor in the front row, her expression unreadable even from a distance. She'd insisted on being escorted by one of my uncles rather than my father, which had necessitated last-minute adjustments to the seating plan. "You okay?" Dad asked, joining me by the window. He looked distinguished in his charcoal suit, a white rose boutonniere pinned to his lapel. "Just nervous," I admitted. "Good nervous, though. That's how it should be." He smiled, offering his arm. "Ready to let me walk you down the aisle to that young man of yours?" The ceremony music began a string quartet playing Bach's Air on the G-string, my favorite piece since childhood. One by one, the groomsmen and bridesmaids processed down the aisle. Melanie, walking with Jason's cousin, managed to add an exaggerated sway to her steps that drew more than a few raised eyebrows. Then came Rachel, serene and elegant, as maid of honor, followed by Jason's brother Michael as best man. A brief pause, a change in music to Pachelbel's canon, and then all the guests rose, turning toward the pavilion entrance where Dad and I now stood. "Deep breath," Dad whispered. "This is your moment." Walking down that aisle, I was acutely aware of every detail: the gentle spring breeze carrying the scent of roses, the rustling of leaves overhead, the faces of friends and family turning to watch our progress. Jason stood beneath the flower arch, his eyes never leaving mine, a smile playing at his lips. Behind him, the wedding officiant, a family friend of the Millers, waited with an open book. I registered Mom's expression as we passed her seat, a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. Beside her, I noticed with a pang, was an empty chair, where Melanie should have stood after her entrance. Instead, my sister had positioned herself partially in front of the arch, as though trying to remain in guests' line of sight during the ceremony. Dad placed my hand in Jason's with a gentle squeeze and stepped back. As the officiant welcomed our guests and began speaking about the meaning of marriage, I felt a profound sense of rightness settle over me. This was exactly where I belonged. The ceremony proceeded beautifully. We exchanged the personal vows we'd written, Jason's voice steady and sure as he promised to stand by me, support me, and cherish me for all our days together. My own voice trembled slightly with emotion as I made the same promises to him. "Marriage isn't just about the easy days," the officiant said, looking out over our assembled guests. "It's about choosing each other again and again through challenges and triumphs alike. It's about building a home in each other's hearts." From the corner of my eye, I could see Mom sitting stone-faced during these words, her posture rigid. Several rows back, Melanie was openly scrolling through her phone, apparently bored by the ceremony. By contrast, Robert and Elizabeth Miller were watching with misty eyes, their hands clasped together after 35 years of marriage. The exchange of rings, the pronouncement as husband and wife, our first kiss as a married couple, each moment unfolded with a perfection that pushed the lingering family tension to the background of my awareness. As we turned to face our guests as Mr. and Mrs. Miller, the applause and cheers wrapped around us like a warm embrace. The recessional was a joyful blur as we made our way back up the aisle hand in hand, pausing briefly to embrace our parents before proceeding to the garden's rose pavilion for the signing of the marriage license, while guests made their way to the cocktail hour. "You did it," Rachel whispered, hugging me tightly as we prepared for post-ceremony photographs. "And you look ridiculously happy." "I am," I confirmed, unable to stop smiling, even as I spotted Melanie complaining loudly to Mom about the heat affecting her makeup. The cocktail hour passed in a whirlwind of congratulations as Jason and I circulated among our guests. The hotel's terrace had been transformed, with string lights, high cocktail tables adorned with small floral arrangements, and a jazz trio playing softly in the corner. Waitstaff circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres, while the photographer captured candid moments throughout the space. I was engaged in conversation with my former college roommate when I overheard Mom's carrying voice from nearby. Yes, the ceremony was nice though. I think they should have gone with my suggestion for the readings. And the garden was lovely, but you should see the venue Melanie has picked out for her wedding when the time comes, of course. I exchanged a glance with Jason, who had also heard. He squeezed my hand reassuringly before smoothly steering us toward his parents, who were chatting with my father and some family friends. There's the happy couple, Robert beamed, raising his glass in a small private toast. Perfect ceremony, absolutely perfect. Though we wouldn't have expected anything less, Elizabeth added warmly. Kimberly, you were a vision. The wedding coordinator appeared at my elbow discreetly, informing us it was time to prepare for our grand entrance into the reception. The wedding party gathered in the hotel's ornate lobby, arranging themselves in the predetermined order. Melanie, I noticed, with resignation rather than surprise, had touched up her already dramatic makeup and somehow acquired a small decorative hair clip that wasn't part of our agreed-upon look. One by one, the bridesmaids and groomsmen were announced and entered the ballroom to applause from our guests. Rachel and Michael entered as maid of honor and best man, and then the double doors closed briefly in preparation for our entrance. "Ready, Mrs. Miller?" Jason whispered, his eyes sparkling. "Absolutely, Mr. Miller," I replied, feeling a thrill at our new shared name. The doors swung open and the DJ's voice rang out. "Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to present to you for the first time as husband and wife, Mr. and Mrs. Jason and Kimberly Miller." We entered to thunderous applause, making our way to the center of the dance floor for our first dance. As Jason took me in his arms and the first notes of our chosen song began Ella Fitzgerald's At Last, I felt myself relax fully for the first time that day. "You're my wife," Jason murmured as we swayed to the music. "How does it feel?" "Perfect," I whispered back. "Absolutely perfect." The reception began in earnest after our dance dinner service toasts from Rachel and Michael that had guests alternately laughing and wiping away tears, the traditional father, daughter, and mother-son dances. When the DJ invited me and Mom for a mother-daughter dance, however, she declined with a tight smile, claiming her arthritis was acting up, though I'd seen her dancing energetically just minutes before. "It's her loss," Dad said quietly as he led me around the floor for an impromptu second father-daughter dance to fill the awkward gap. "You're radiant today, Kimberly." I couldn't be prouder. As dinner concluded and the cake cutting approached, I began to feel a cautious optimism. Despite the earlier tensions, the reception was unfolding beautifully. Guests were enjoying themselves, the food had been excellent, and even Mom and Melanie seemed to be behaving themselves more or less. "I think we might actually make it through without any major drama," I confided to Jason as we made our way back to our seats, after greeting another table of guests. He kissed my temple gently. "That's the spirit. And even if they try something, we're surrounded by people who love us. Nothing can touch what we have." I didn't realize then how prophetic his words would be, or how soon they would be tested. The reception was in full swing, with guests alternating between the dance floor and their tables, as coffee and dessert were served alongside our wedding cake. Jason and I had just finished making the rounds to thank everyone for coming when Robert Miller clinked his glass, signaling for attention. If I could have everyone's attention for just a moment, he called his voice, carrying across the ballroom. The music faded and conversations died down as guests turned toward him. Robert moved to stand beside Elizabeth, both of them beaming at Jason and me. Elizabeth and I wanted to take this opportunity to formally present our wedding gift to the newlyweds. A murmur of interest ran through the crowd. Robert gestured toward the ballroom's floor-to-ceiling windows which overlooked the hotel's circular driveway. On cue, the heavy drapes were drawn back to reveal our pearl-white Mercedes GLC, now decorated with an enormous red bow and "Just Married" written in elegant script across the back window. While we know material possessions are far less important than the commitment Jason and Kimberly have made today, Robert continued, "We wanted to give them something practical for their new life together. Both of them work hard, saving lives at the hospital, and we thought they deserved something safe and reliable for whatever adventures lie ahead." Applause broke out as Robert handed Jason a small velvet box containing the car keys. I blinked back tears as Jason and I hugged his parents, overwhelmed by their generosity. "Thank you both so much," I whispered, embracing Elizabeth. "We're the ones who are thankful," she replied softly, "for the happiness you've brought our son." The music resumed, and guests returned to dancing and mingling. As I stood chatting with some hospital colleagues, I noticed Mom and Melanie in deep conversation across the room, their heads close together. Mom's expression had changed from polite disinterest to something more calculating as she repeatedly glanced toward the windows where the car was visible. I tried to ignore the familiar sense of unease their huddled discussion triggered. This was my wedding night. I wouldn't let their behavior dictate my mood. But when Melanie broke away from Mom and made a beeline toward me, I steeled myself for whatever was coming. Melanie's voice was overly bright as she linked her arm through mine, practically pulling me away from my conversation. "What a gorgeous car. The Millers really do know how to make an impression, don't they?" "It's very generous," I agreed cautiously. "Jason and I are very grateful. So practical, too," Melanie continued, her eyes gleaming. "Much more practical than your current Honda, right? Which reminds me," she lowered her voice conspiratorially. "I was thinking, since you don't need your old car anymore, maybe I could borrow it, just until I get back on my feet. Financially." I blinked, momentarily taken aback. "Borrow my Honda, Mel. We haven't decided what we're doing with it yet. We might keep both cars." "But why would you need 2 cars?" Melanie pressed. "That's just wasteful when your sister could really use one. Mine's in the shop again, and the repair costs are astronomical." "I understand, but today's not really the time to discuss this," I said, trying to extricate my arm from her grip. "Maybe we can talk after Jason and I get back from our honeymoon." Melanie's smile tightened. "Sure, whatever," she said, dismissively. "Just think about it. Family should help family right." She walked away, her altered bridesmaid dress drawing stares as she sashayed toward the bar. I shook my head slightly, wondering how she could make even a car discussion about herself on my wedding day. The reception continued, with the cake cutting a beautiful 3-tier confection with buttercream frosting and fresh flowers matching our decor. Jason and I managed to feed each other cake without smashing it in each other's faces, much to the photographer's apparent disappointment. Next came the bouquet toss, which I'd been quietly dreading. I'd considered skipping this tradition entirely, knowing Melanie's competitive nature, but several of my younger cousins had specifically requested it. As single women gathered on the dance floor, I turned my back to them and prepared to toss my smaller throwing bouquet over my shoulder. Before I could count to 3, I felt someone press close behind me, Melanie, who had positioned herself directly in my toss line, despite being several feet taller than the teenage cousins around her. I adjusted my aim slightly to give the younger girls a fair chance, but Melanie lunged forward at the last second, practically tackling my cousin Zoe to snatch the bouquet from midair. She immediately raised it over her head in triumph, posing for the photographer with an exaggerated expression of surprise and delight. "Looks like I'm next," she announced loudly, making a show of examining the bouquet as though it contained some profound secret. "Though I'll definitely choose a different venue. No offense, Kim, but this is all a bit safe, isn't it?" I forced a smile, turning away to find Jason. I needed a moment away from the spotlight and away from Melanie. Jason, sensing my mood, suggested we take a brief breather in the hotel's adjacent parlor room. "You're doing great," he assured me, rubbing my shoulders gently. "Just a few more hours, and then it's just you and me in Santorini for 2 glorious weeks." The thought of our honeymoon, far from family complications, gave me the strength to return to our reception. As I made my way toward the restrooms to touch up my makeup, I rounded a corner and nearly collided with Mom, who appeared to have been waiting. "There you are," she said, her voice low and intense. "We need to talk." "Mom, I'm in the middle of my wedding reception," I pointed out. "Can it wait?" "No, it can't." She glanced around to ensure we were alone, then fixed me with a hard stare. "It's about the car." "What about it?" "Your sister deserves the car his parents gave you, not you." The words fell between us like stones, each one landing with deliberate weight. I stared at her, certain I'd misheard. "Excuse me." "You heard me." Mom crossed her arms. "Melanie needs a reliable car. She lost her job last month and her car is on its last legs. You and Jason both have good jobs, and you certainly don't need 2 vehicles, especially not with one being such an extravagant luxury." "Mom," I said, slowly struggling to process her suggestion that car was a wedding gift to Jason and me from his parents. It's not mine to give away. Don't be selfish, Kimberly, Mom snapped. You've always been the fortunate one. Scholarships, good jobs, marrying into money. Melanie has struggled. She actually needs the help, unlike you. The familiar script, Melanie's needs always trumping mine, regardless of circumstances, hit me with a wave of déjà vu. But never had it been quite so blatant, so utterly tone-deaf. I can't believe we're having this conversation right now, I said, my voice barely steady. On my wedding day. About a gift from my in-laws. This is exactly the problem, Mom huffed. You've always had a flair for drama. Making everything about you. I felt tears threatening and blinked them back furiously, unwilling to let her see how deeply her words cut. Before I could formulate a response that wouldn't devolve into a scene, I heard footsteps approaching. Jason appeared around the corner, his expression shifting to concern when he saw my face. Everything okay? He asked, coming to stand beside me. Fine, I said automatically. Mom and I were just talking about how Kimberly should demonstrate family loyalty by giving Melanie the Mercedes, Mom said bluntly. Melanie's going through a rough patch and needs reliable transportation. I'm sure your parents wouldn't mind. They can clearly afford to buy you another. Jason's expression hardened. Mrs. Bennett, he said, his tone polite but cold. That car was a gift to both of us from my parents. It's not something we're planning to give away to anyone. Well, that's rather selfish, isn't it? Mom retorted. But I shouldn't be surprised. Kimberly has always been good at looking out for herself first. That's enough. Jason's voice took on an edge I rarely heard. I won't have you talking to my wife that way on our wedding day, or any day for that matter. Your wife, Mom repeated with a brittle laugh. Let's be honest, Jason. We all know why you married her. A doctor's son with a hospital administrator for a father, you needed someone suitably accomplished to match your family's standards. Kimberly trapped you with her professional credentials, but don't pretend this is some grand love match. The accusation hit like a physical blow. Jason's arm went around me protectively as I struggled to breathe through the shock of my own mother, suggesting my husband didn't truly love me. You don't know the first thing about our relationship, Jason said, his voice dangerously quiet. Oh, please, came Melanie's voice as she appeared behind Mom, clearly having been eavesdropping nearby. Kim's always been good at presenting herself as the perfect daughter, the perfect nurse, the perfect girlfriend. Some of us just didn't have her advantages. I finally found my voice. Melanie, I worked 3 jobs through college to supplement my scholarship. I studied until 2 a.m. most nights to maintain my GPA. What advantages are you talking about? You were always Mom and Dad's favorite. Melanie shot back the old accusation, so absurd it momentarily left me speechless. Are you serious right now? I managed. Ladies, Jason tried to intervene. This isn't the time or place. Oh, stay out of it, Mr. Perfect, Melanie snapped. This is family business. Jason is my family now, I said, finding strength in the simple truth of it. Choose that car over your sister, Mom, said her voice hard, and you'll show everyone what kind of person you really are. The confrontation had begun drawing attention. From the corner of my eye, I saw Rachel approaching quickly, concern etched on her face. Behind her, I glimpsed Robert and Elizabeth Miller, their expressions shifting from confusion to alarm as they registered the tension in our small group. What's going on? Rachel asked, positioning herself beside me. Just a small family discussion, Mom said, with false brightness. Nothing to worry about. Nothing to worry about, I echoed, my voice rising despite my best efforts. Mom just told me I should give Melanie the car Jason's parents gifted us. On our wedding day, because apparently I've had too many advantages in life and need to make up for it. Rachel's eyebrows shot up. You can't be serious. Oh, always so dramatic, Melanie rolled her eyes. We're just talking about sharing resources. That's what families do. By this point, Robert and Elizabeth had joined our increasingly uncomfortable circle. Elizabeth placed a gentle hand on my arm, her concern evident. Is everything all right? She asked quietly. Mrs. Bennett seems to think Kimberly should give our wedding gift to her sister Jason, explained, his tone carefully controlled. Robert's eyebrows rose, but his response was measured. I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. The car was a gift to both Jason and Kimberly from Elizabeth and me. It's not something we would expect them to give away. No one asked what you would expect, Mom retorted, her facade of politeness finally crumbling completely. This is between my daughters. The public confrontation had gone beyond embarrassing into the realm of mortifying. Guests were beginning to notice the tense gathering near the restrooms, a few of them pausing in their conversations to watch curiously. Perhaps we should continue this discussion another time, Elizabeth suggested diplomatically. Today is a celebration after all. That's exactly my point, Mom said, her voice rising. Kimberly has plenty to celebrate: a husband from a wealthy family, a fancy car, a big wedding. What does Melanie have? Nothing. The least Kimberly could do is share her good fortune. It was the last straw. After years of similar moments, every achievement diminished every joy, undercut always in favor of Melanie. Something inside me finally broke free. The dam of silence I'd built around my mother's treatment of me crumbled, and I knew I couldn't hold back the flood any longer. I felt something shift inside me, a release of tension so profound it was almost physical. Years of accommodating, of making excuses, of hoping things would magically improve, crashed down around me. I turned to Jason, my voice surprisingly steady. "I need a few minutes," I said. "Can you make our excuses to anyone who asks?" Jason searched my face, understanding dawning in his eyes. "Of course. Take all the time you need." I turned without another word and walked toward the bridal suite, aware of Rachel falling into step beside me, silently supportive as always. Behind us, I heard Mom's indignant voice. "Where does she think she's going? We haven't resolved anything," but I didn't look back. Once inside the suite, I sank onto a plush settee, my wedding dress billowing around me. The tears I'd been holding back all day threatened to overflow, but strangely, I felt more angry than hurt. "I can't believe she would do this," Rachel said, pacing the room. "On your wedding day of all days. That's a new low, even for Patricia." A soft knock at the door preceded Elizabeth Miller's entrance, her expression concerned but not pitying. "May I join you?" At my nod, she sat beside me, smoothing her silver dress with practiced grace. "I'm so sorry, Kimberly. That was an awful position for your mother to put you in." "I'm the one who should apologize," I said, mortification creeping back. "For my mother's behavior, for this scene at my wedding. For all of it." "Nonsense," Elizabeth said firmly. "You're not responsible for your mother's actions. But I think you know that, don't you? Even if you haven't always let yourself believe it." Her words hit home with unexpected force. How many times had I apologized for Mom's behavior? How many years had I spent trying to manage her moods, placate her demands, make peace at any cost to myself? Jason's father and I, Elizabeth, continued carefully. We've seen this dynamic in our own extended families. Sometimes people, even parents, can become so caught in their own narratives that they lose sight of the damage they cause. "It's been this way my whole life," I admitted, the words spilling out after years of careful containment. "Nothing I do is ever enough. Melanie always needs more, deserves more, should have more, even when it's mine." "May I offer some perspective?" Elizabeth asked. When I nodded, she continued, "In my experience, this pattern won't change unless you change your response to it. Your mother and sister have learned that if they push hard enough, you'll eventually give in to keep the peace." "She's right," Rachel added, from where she stood by the window. "They count on you being reasonable, on you being the good daughter who sacrifices to maintain family harmony." Jason appeared at the door, then followed by his brother Michael and his father Robert. "Mom, everything okay in here?" Jason asked, his eyes finding mine. "We're having a moment of clarity," Elizabeth replied, patting my hand. Jason crossed to kneel before me, taking both my hands in his. "I'm so sorry this is happening today." "Don't be," I said, surprising myself with my calm. "In a way, it's perfect timing." "Perfect?" Jason looked confused. "Yes," I nodded slowly, the pieces falling into place. "Today is about new beginnings, right? About choices and commitments. Maybe it's exactly the right time to set some boundaries I should have established years ago." Robert cleared his throat. "The guests are wondering where you've gone. Your mother is telling people you're having a moment and should be back shortly." A flash of renewed anger coursed through me. Even now, she was controlling the narrative, making me sound emotional and unstable. "Then I shouldn't keep them waiting," I said, standing up. Jason rose with me, still holding my hands. "But first, I need to speak with my mother and sister. Privately." "Are you sure?" Jason asked. "I can come with you." "No," I shook my head. "This is something I need to do myself." Rachel helped me touch up my makeup while Elizabeth straightened my veil. I caught sight of myself in the mirror, still a bride but somehow different. More resolved, more certain. "We'll be right outside if you need us," Rachel promised as I headed for the door. I found Mom and Melanie in a small anteroom adjacent to the ballroom, both wearing expressions of injured dignity that were so familiar they almost made me laugh. Finally, Mom huffed as I entered. I don't know what kind of display that was, but it was extremely immature to walk away in the middle of a discussion. It wasn't a discussion, I said quietly, closing the door behind me. It was an ambush. On my wedding day, "Oh, don't be so dramatic," Melanie began, but I held up a hand, silencing her with a gesture that surprised all three of us. "No," I said firmly. "I'm going to speak now, and you're both going to listen." For once, the authority in my voice seemed to momentarily stun them into compliance. I took a deep breath and began. "Mom, for as long as I can remember, you've treated Melanie and me differently. You've praised her for the same things you've criticized me for. You've made excuses for her failures while dismissing my successes. You've demanded I make sacrifices for her that she's never been expected to make for me." Mom's mouth opened to protest, but I continued before she could speak. "When I got a scholarship to college, you told relatives it was because I was always studying instead of having fun. When I graduated with honors, you spent my celebration talking about Melanie's gap year plans. When I became a pediatric nurse, you acted like it was a disappointment I hadn't become a doctor." I turned to Melanie. "And you've taken it all as your due. Every time Mom prioritized your needs over mine, you accepted it as natural. Every time she asked me to give something up so you could have more, you went along with it without question." "That's not fair," Melanie began. "It's completely fair," I cut her off. "But what happened today crossed a line. A wedding gift from my in-laws, one of the most personal, meaningful gifts possible, and your immediate response is to demand I give it to you." I shook my head in disbelief. "Do you have any idea how entitled that sounds? How utterly disconnected from normal family relationships?" "We're just concerned about your priorities," Mom said tightly. "This new family of yours, they're very different from us. Very showy with their wealth. That's what this is really about, isn't it?" I realized. "You're jealous. You're jealous that Jason's parents have welcomed me unconditionally, that they celebrate my accomplishments instead of diminishing them. You're jealous that they gave us a generous gift that you couldn't match." Mom's face flushed. "That's ridiculous. I'm concerned about your sister's well-being, that's all." "No," I said, my voice steady. "You're concerned about preserving the family dynamic you've created, where Melanie's needs always come first, where I'm expected to give and she's expected to take, where I'm never quite good enough and she's never held accountable. You've always been so self-centered," Melanie spat, her facade cracking. "So convinced you're perfect. Some of us have real struggles, Kim. Some of us aren't teachers' pets who get everything handed to them." The accusation was so divorced from reality that I actually laughed. Handed to me, I worked multiple jobs through college while maintaining my scholarship. I put in extra shifts to save for my first apartment. I've built my career through hard work and dedication. Meanwhile, you've dropped out of college twice, quit every job you've ever had, and still live rent-free with Mom at 26. "How dare you," Mom began. "No, how dare you," I cut her off. "How dare you come to my wedding and try to turn it into another opportunity to favor Melanie? How dare you insult my husband and his family? How dare you demand I give away a wedding gift as though I have no right to receive nice things?" I smoothed my dress, gathering my thoughts. "I've spent my whole life trying to earn your approval, Mom. Trying to be good enough. Today, I finally realize that nothing I do will ever be enough because this isn't about me at all. It's about you." "What is that supposed to mean?" Mom demanded. "It means I'm done," I said simply. Done trying to meet impossible standards. Done accepting unequal treatment. Done making excuses for both of you. I looked from Mom to Melanie and back. "From now on, these are my boundaries. You will respect my marriage, or you won't be part of my life. You will treat Jason with courtesy, or you won't see us. You will stop comparing me unfavorably to Melanie, or our conversations will end immediately. And you will never, ever again suggest that I should give up something of mine, because Melanie deserves it more." The silence that followed was deafening. Mom's expression had shifted from indignation to shock. "You can't be serious," she finally said. "Setting boundaries with your own mother. This isn't some self-help book, Kimberly. This is real life." "Yes, it is," I agreed. "And in real life, I get to decide who I allow to treat me poorly. Even family." "So, that's it," Melanie demanded. "You marry into money, and suddenly you're too good for us." "This has nothing to do with money," I said tiredly. "It's about respect. Basic human respect that I've been denied for too long." Mom stood abruptly. "I see you've made your choice. If you value material possessions over your sister's needs—" "Stop," I interrupted. That manipulation doesn't work anymore. This isn't about the car. It's about 28 years of being treated as less important, less worthy than my sister. And I'm done accepting it. Then I suppose we have nothing more to discuss, Mom said coldly. Melanie, get your things. We're leaving. You're leaving my wedding reception, I asked, more sad than surprised. You've made it clear we're not welcome, Mom sniffed. I've made it clear I expect to be treated with respect, I corrected. If that's incompatible with your presence, then yes, perhaps you should go. Melanie looked momentarily uncertain, caught between her usual alliance with Mom and the reality of walking out on her sister's wedding. For a fleeting moment, I saw a shadow of doubt cross her face. You're being ridiculous, she finally said, but her voice lacked its usual conviction. Come on, Mom. Let's go. I watched them gather their things, a strange sense of calm settling over me despite the enormity of what was happening. Mom paused at the door, turning back with one last attempt at reasserting control. When you come to your senses, you know where to find us, she said, her tone, suggesting she was bestowing a great kindness. Goodbye, Mom, I said, simply holding the door open. Goodbye, Melanie. As they swept past me and down the hall, I felt a curious mixture of guilt and liberation. Had I just destroyed my family relationships on my wedding day? A voice that sounded remarkably like Rachel's whispered in my mind. No, they did that themselves long ago. I stood alone in the anteroom for several moments, breathing deeply, allowing the reality of what had just happened to settle around me. Then I straightened my shoulders, checked my reflection in a small wall mirror, and opened the door to find Jason, Rachel, and the Millers waiting anxiously in the hallway. They left, I said simply. Jason's arms were around me instantly. Are you okay? Surprisingly, yes, I replied, leaning into his embrace. For the first time in a long time, I think I actually am. Rachel's eyes were wide. You mean they left the reception completely? I nodded. I finally stood up for myself. Set boundaries. Made it clear I wouldn't accept their treatment anymore. I'm proud of you, Jason whispered against my hair. We all are, Elizabeth added, her expression warm with understanding. A momentary flicker of doubt crossed my mind. But what will people think? The mother and sister of the bride leaving in the middle of the reception. Let me handle that, Robert said confidently. No one needs to know the details. We'll simply say they weren't feeling well and had to leave early. And honestly, Rachel added with a slightly wicked smile, I'm pretty sure most of your guests saw how they've been behaving today. They'll draw their own conclusions. Michael cleared his throat. So, are we going back to your reception? Because I was about to destroy Jason's college roommate on the dance floor when all this started. The absurdity of his statement broke the tension, and I found myself laughing, genuinely laughing, for what felt like the first time that day. Absolutely, I said, taking Jason's hand. This is still our wedding day, and I intend to enjoy every minute of what's left of it. We returned to the reception where the party was in full swing. If guests noticed Mom and Melanie's absence, they were tactful enough not to mention it. I danced with my father, who seemed to sense something significant had happened but didn't press for details. I shared a special dance with Robert, who told me how grateful he was that Jason had found someone with both kindness and backbone. And I danced with Jason, my husband, who looked at me with such love and pride that any lingering doubts about my confrontation with Mom and Melanie melted away. As the night wound down, Rachel pulled me aside during a quiet moment. So she said, studying my face, how does it feel standing up for yourself after all these years? I considered the question carefully. Scary, I admitted, but right. Like I finally stopped holding my breath after years of trying not to make waves. About damn time, Rachel said, hugging me fiercely. And for what it's worth, I think you handled it perfectly. No screaming, no scene, just clear, firm boundaries. Do you think they'll respect those boundaries? I asked, voicing my biggest concern. Rachel's expression turned thoughtful. Honestly, not at first. They've had too many years of you accommodating their behavior. But if you stay consistent, if you follow through when they test you, they might eventually learn. And if they don't, she shrugged, that's on them, not you. The reception ended with Jason and I running through a tunnel of sparklers held by our cheering guests, climbing into our decorated Mercedes, which a groomsman had moved from display to the exit, and driving away toward our future, together. As the hotel receded in the rearview mirror, I felt the last of the day's tension leave my body. "Penny, for your thoughts, Mrs. Miller," Jason asked, reaching for my hand across the console. Just thinking about how different this day turned out from what I expected, I replied honestly. "And yet, I wouldn't change how it ended. Even the confrontation with your mom and sister, even that I confirmed. Maybe especially that. It was a long time coming." "Well," Jason said, bringing my hand to his lips, "I for one am thrilled to be married to a woman who knows her own worth, who finally told those who've been diminishing her that enough is enough." We drove in comfortable silence for a while, the events of the day settling into perspective. "What happens now?" I finally asked. "With Mom and Melanie, that depends on them," Jason said thoughtfully. "You've set your boundaries. Now we wait to see if they can respect them." I nodded, knowing he was right. The road ahead with my family would likely be complicated, but for the first time, I felt equipped to navigate it on my own terms. The Greek islands of Santorini proved to be the perfect honeymoon escape. For 2 blissful weeks, Jason and I explored whitewashed villages, swam in the crystal blue Aegean, and dined on fresh seafood under star-filled skies. Far from Boston and family drama, I found space to process everything that had happened on our wedding day. "Do you regret it?" Jason asked one evening, as we sat on our private terrace watching the famous Santorini sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. "The confrontation with your mom and sister." I considered his question carefully. "No," I said finally. "I regret that it had to happen at all, especially on our wedding day. But I don't regret standing up for myself. It was overdue." During quiet moments on beaches and long walks through ancient ruins, I reflected on patterns that had defined my relationship with Mom and Melanie for decades. I recognized how I'd enabled their behavior by always accommodating, always seeking peace at my own expense. I saw more clearly how their treatment had shaped my sense of self-worth, making me work twice as hard for half the recognition. Our return to Boston brought reality crashing back. 3 voice messages from Mom awaited me, their tone evolving from indignant. "I can't believe you'd humiliate us like that," to injured. "After everything I've done for you," to tentatively conciliatory. "Call me when you get back, so we can put this unfortunate incident behind us." Noticeably absent was any acknowledgement of her behavior or apology for her actions. "What are you going to do?" Jason asked as we unpacked in our apartment, now officially our shared home. "Maintain my boundaries," I said more confidently than I felt. I meant what I said. My first attempt at establishing these new boundaries came the following weekend, when Mom called inviting us to Sunday dinner to smooth things over. When I asked if she was prepared to acknowledge her behavior at the wedding and apologize, her response was telling. "Kimberly, I think we all said things in the heat of the moment. Let's just move forward." "I'm happy to move forward," I replied calmly, "but only after you recognize why your actions were hurtful. I need acknowledgement that demanding Jason and I give away our wedding gift to Melanie was inappropriate." "You're still hung up on that," Mom sighed heavily. "This is exactly the kind of materialistic attitude I was concerned about. The old Kimberly would never have been so attached to a car. The old Kimberly let you diminish her achievements and prioritize Melanie's wants over her needs," I said quietly. "I'm not that person anymore." The conversation ended shortly after, with Mom claiming I was being influenced by Jason's family and their values. I hung up feeling shaky, but resolved. Jason found me sitting quietly in our living room afterward, and simply held me without asking questions, somehow understanding exactly what I needed. In the weeks that followed, I began seeing a therapist to help me navigate this new territory. Dr. Marshall specialized in family dynamics and helped me understand the patterns that had shaped our relationships for so long. "What you're describing sounds like elements of narcissistic family dynamics," she explained during one session. "Your mother positioned Melanie as the golden child, and you as the responsible child, who was expected to sacrifice for the family's needs." But why, I asked the question that had haunted me for years. Why favor one child so obviously over the other? "There are many possible explanations," Dr. Marshall said, thoughtfully. "Sometimes a parent sees themselves in one child more than another. Sometimes it's about control. The golden child often remains more dependent on the parent. But ultimately, this isn't about anything you did or didn't do. This dynamic was established long ago for reasons that have more to do with your mother's needs than either you or your sister." These insights were both painful and liberating. understanding that I couldn't change Mom or Melanie, that their behavior stemmed from deep-seated patterns unlikely to shift quickly, if ever freed me from the responsibility I'd always felt for maintaining family harmony. Meanwhile, life with Jason settled into a comfortable rhythm. We worked, we traveled, we built routines and traditions that were uniquely ours. The Mercedes became a symbol of both the conflict and my growth, a daily reminder of the stand I'd taken and the boundaries I was learning to maintain. 2 months after the wedding, Melanie reached out via text, asking to meet for coffee, just the two of us. Curious but cautious, I agreed to meet at a neutral cafe halfway between our homes. "You look good," she said as she slid into the seat across from me, studying me with an expression I couldn't quite decipher. "Marriage agrees with you." "It does," I agreed. "How have you been?" "Fine," she shrugged. "Got a new job at a marketing agency. Entry level, but it's something." "That's great," I said sincerely. "I hope it works out." We chatted about safe topics for a while: the unseasonably warm fall, a mutual cousin's engagement, a new restaurant that had opened downtown. Eventually, Melanie set down her coffee cup with deliberate precision. "Look, I've been thinking about what happened at your wedding," she began, her expression uncomfortable. "I still think you overreacted, but maybe I shouldn't have expected you to give me your car." That was presumptuous. Coming from Melanie, this halting semi-acknowledgement was practically a full apology. I recognized it for the olive branch it was. "Thank you for saying that," I said carefully. "I appreciate it." "Mom's pretty upset still," Melanie continued, watching me closely. "She thinks you've changed since meeting Jason. Become more selfish." "I have changed," I acknowledged. "But not in the way she thinks. I've just stopped accepting treatment that diminishes me." Melanie looked genuinely perplexed. "What are you talking about? Mom's always been your biggest supporter." The gap between her perception and my reality was so vast, it momentarily left me speechless. Had we grown up in the same household, experienced the same mother? "Melanie," I said carefully, "Mom has consistently favored you over me since we were children. She's praised you for things she's criticized me for, made excuses for your failures while dismissing my successes, and regularly expected me to sacrifice for your benefit." "That's ridiculous," Melanie scoffed, but there was something uncertain in her eyes. "You were always the perfect one. The one with the grades and the career, and now the rich husband. I worked hard for everything I have," I said firmly. "Nothing was handed to me. And the fact that you see my life that way just proves my point about how differently we were treated." We parted without resolving anything, but something had shifted a crack in the narrative. Melanie had always accepted without question. Whether it would lead to real change remained to be seen. The holidays brought the next test of my boundaries. Thanksgiving had always been spent at Mom's house, but this year, Jason and I accepted an invitation from his parents to join them at their lake house instead. When Mom called to confirm our usual arrival time, I explained our plans had changed. "What do you mean you're not coming?" she demanded. "It's tradition. Melanie's driving up from Rhode Island especially. We've made other plans this year," I explained calmly. "We'll be with Jason's family." I see Mom's voice turned cold. "So they're your family now, and we're just an afterthought." "That's not fair," I said, refusing to be baited. "We're spending Christmas Eve with you as we already discussed. But we're allowed to make our own traditions now that we're married." The conversation deteriorated from there, with Mom cycling through familiar tactics, guilt comparison, Melanie would never abandon family like this, and finally martyrdom. "I suppose I'll just have to accept that you don't value our traditions anymore." In the past, I would have capitulated, changed our plans to keep peace. This time, I held firm, ending the call when it became circular. Afterwards, I sat at our kitchen table, hands shaking slightly. "You did great," Jason assured me, having overheard most of the conversation. "It gets easier with practice." He was right. Each time I maintained a boundary, declining a last-minute demand, ending a conversation when it turned manipulative, refusing to engage in the old dynamics, it became a little easier. The guilt lessened. The certainty that I was doing what was necessary for my own well-being grew stronger. Christmas Eve at Mom's was tense but manageable. I brought a beautiful poinsettia plant as a hostess gift, helped prepare dinner, and maintained pleasant but neutral conversation. When Mom made a pointed comment about some people's materialistic values, I simply changed the subject rather than defending myself. When Melanie complained about her job and pointedly mentioned her continuing car troubles, I expressed sympathy without offering solutions. By spring, a new pattern had established itself. I maintained limited contact with Mom and Melanie, occasional dinners, holiday gatherings, brief phone calls, while enforcing clear boundaries around acceptable behavior. When those boundaries were tested, as they frequently were, I responded consistently by either redirecting the conversation or, if necessary, ending it altogether. It wasn't easy. There were days when the guilt was overwhelming, when I questioned whether I was being too harsh, too unforgiving. In those moments, Jason, Rachel, and increasingly the Millers provided perspective and support. Family should lift you up, not tear you down. Elizabeth reminded me during one particularly difficult period. Love shouldn't require diminishing yourself. The first anniversary of our wedding brought unexpected developments. Mom called with news that Melanie had enrolled in community college again, this time with a focused plan to earn an associate's degree in graphic design. "She's really committed this time," Mom said, with the familiar note of pride I'd heard my whole life when she spoke of Melanie. But then she added something unexpected. "I think seeing you stand your ground." Well, it made an impression on her. I wasn't sure how to respond to this oblique acknowledgement that my boundaries might actually have had a positive impact. "That's great," I said finally. "I hope it works out for her." And Mom continued, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant. "I've been thinking about what you said, about how I've treated you and Melanie differently. I'm not saying I agree completely, but I'm trying to see things from your perspective." It wasn't an apology, not really, but it was more self-reflection than I'd ever heard from her before. A small step, perhaps, but a step nonetheless. Our first anniversary celebration was everything our wedding day should have been: joyful, relaxed, focused entirely on our love and commitment to each other. We spent the weekend at a charming bed and breakfast in Vermont, hiking through spring forests and enjoying quiet dinners by candlelight. "Any regrets?" Jason asked as we toasted with champagne on our anniversary night. About how everything unfolded this past year, I considered the question carefully. "No," I said finally. "It's been hard but necessary. I feel more like myself, more whole than I ever have before." The journey wasn't over, of course. Family dynamics built over decades don't transform overnight. Mom still occasionally tested boundaries. Melanie still had moments of entitlement, and I still sometimes struggled with guilt and second-guessing. But I was learning, growing, healing. The greatest lesson I've taken from this journey is that family, true family, is defined not by blood, but by love and respect. It's found in people who celebrate your successes rather than diminishing them, who value your boundaries rather than trampling them, who see you as worthy in your own right rather than in comparison to others. Sometimes those people are the ones you're born to. Sometimes they're the ones you find along the way. Sometimes, if you're very lucky like me, they're the ones you marry into. And sometimes, the most profound act of self-love is recognizing the difference and having the courage to act accordingly. As I reflect on everything that's happened since that moment at my wedding when Mom said those fateful words, "Your sister deserves the car his parents gave you, not you," I realize now it was the breaking point I needed. A catalyst for change that, painful as it was, set me on the path to authentic self-worth and genuine relationships. For anyone struggling with similar family dynamics, wondering if it's worth the discomfort of setting boundaries, I can only share what I've learned. Your needs matter. Your feelings are valid. And sometimes, standing up for yourself is the greatest gift you can give, not just to yourself, but ultimately to everyone in your life. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members? What was your experience? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video if it resonated with you. Subscribe for more real-life stories and share with someone who might need to hear this message today. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, you deserve relationships that honor your worth always.